Partial funding for the operation of this channel is provided by the City of Oceanside.
This program brought to you by the caring hands of Tri-City Medical Center.
Welcome to this edition of The Voice of Oceanside. The city this show is named for is going to be 125 years old on July 3rd, 2013. And our guest is Christy Hawthorne, who's president of the Oceanside Historical Society and a couple of other organizations that are very relevant to this show. Christy, thanks for joining us on this Voice of Oceanside.
Thank you for having me.
So, Christy, you're doing dual duty here. In addition to being president of the Historical Society, you are also with the Chamber, correct?
I'm the event coordinator for the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce, yes.
Okay. And those two organizations are getting together to throw a celebration.
That's right. The Oceanside Chamber of Commerce has spearheaded the planning and the celebration for Oceanside's 125th. We've kind of taken the lead on that. One of the things we're excited about is the 125 magazine that's going to be out here very soon and available. It's going to have the history of Oceanside from 1888 to the present with a number of historic photographs.
Now that magazine's going to highlight the events that are going to occur throughout the year?
It will actually have in the back a calendar of events so people can look and see what they're interested in so they can participate in some way.
Well, after our break, in the second half of this show, we're going to get into detail on exactly what the gala celebrations are going to be. But I thought first we could talk about some of the history of Oceanside. It's not something we've done a lot on this show. We always focus on current events. So take us back to 125 years ago. And I guess it's July 3rd, right? 125 years ago. What was going on here at that time?
Well, if I can go back just a little bit further,
sure.
About 1883, Andrew Jackson Myers, who is considered Oceanside's founder, he receives a land grant of 160 acres, which is downtown Oceanside. He got wind that the railroad was going to come from Los Angeles and connect down to San Diego via Colton and Riverside. So it was a very opportune time for him to receive this land grant. And then he quickly employs Cave Couts Jr. to subdivide, survey the property, and they began then selling the lots, so to speak. And some of those first investors were from Riverside in the Colton San Bernardino area, and Oceanside is a tiny little enclave in the early 1880s, and by 1888 there's about 1,000 folks living in Oceanside, and they decide there's a lot of talk around March of 1888 that they want to incorporate. There's a lot of fuss, a lot of conversation, and eventually they actually vote to incorporate, and that was ratified then on July 3rd, 1888, and here we are 125 years later.
Who else was a legitimate city in San Diego County? And obviously you had the city of San Diego at that time.
Right, we're the third city in San Diego County to incorporate. San Diego, the city of San Diego, National City, and then Oceanside. The city of Escondido incorporates, I believe, in September of 1888, but we've got the claim to fame of being the third.
And there was a lot of empty territory to the north by the time you got to the next city.
There was. Rancho Santa Margarita, which is now we all know as Camp Pendleton, but Rancho Santa Margarita was the vast area that we still know. And so Oceanside was the gateway to San Diego County. As people were coming through Orange County or coming through Riverside, Oceanside was considered and still considered the gateway to San Diego County.
So initially we had rail traffic.
Yes.
And then I understand that the next big draw was the pier, really.
Yes, Oceanside had a pier. We built our first pier in 1888. The hopes for that pier was actually going to be a commercial wharf which never transpired, but that was one of the big selling points. And instead, we kind of maybe made lemonade out of our lemons and turned our aspirations into having a municipal pier. It became a recreational point then, and then Oceanside started selling itself as a resort city. We had a beautiful hotel on Pacific Street. The railroad was bringing in passengers back then, and of course it wasn't a 2-minute stop. The train actually stopped for hours at a time, so people would get off the train, maybe have some lunch, they could walk on the pier, visit the hotels, and they were hoping then to invest in Oceanside, come and live here, have raise their families here. And so the pier was actually a great selling point for Oceanside. The first pier, built in 1888, only lasted about a year and a half, 2 years, and then the second pier was built in 1894, and currently we're on our 6th pier that was built in 87.
Were they all roughly in the same area? Was one built on top of the other?
No, actually the first pier was at the end of Wisconsin Street. Back then it was called Couts Street, named after Cave Couts, who founded or who owned Rancho Guajome over there in the Vista area. And then it changed to Wisconsin in 1927. That's just kind of some trivia there. But then the second pier was built at the end of 3rd Street, which we now call Pierview Way. And then subsequently, all the other piers have been at the end of 3rd Street.
You know, interestingly enough, just by coincidence, aren't some relics of that pier visible now?
We were so excited in 2012. We had an extremely low tide, and the sand level at the beach was very low as well. And a number of those pier pilings from that first pier made their appearance 124 years later. We were really thrilled. It seems maybe the perfect storm, if you will, that they make their appearance about every 10 to 15 years. And they were such a distant memory in my mind, I started to think I had imagined that I saw them about 20 years ago, and then I was thrilled to see them show up. We had about 12 to 14 pilings were actually uncovered. And so we went out there, took measurements of the pilings so we could kind of guesstimate the distance between each piling, how wide the pier might have been. We're very excited about that.
Well, the next thing that came through, I guess, around the turn of the century was the highway, right?
Yeah, the highway, Hill Street, which is everyone now we call it Coast Highway. Hill Street was the main thoroughfare through town, and the state highway system comes in place about 1913, and officially 1917. The state actually funded to pave a portion of Hill Street, which was a huge deal because you've got a tiny little town here, and now we've got paved streets. And that traffic then coming from Orange County, Los Angeles, is bringing all of this wonderful transportation through our main street all the way down to San Diego. And as we mentioned before, Rancho Santa Margarita being that vast, empty, open space, it was the first opportunity that that travelers had a time to fill up their gas tanks, get some food, get some needed coffee. You know, people run on coffee and gasoline back then just like we do today, and that much needed rest stop. So the highway coming through Oceanside was just as critical as the railroad was, and it really brought a lot of renewed interest and excitement. And then people seeing how lovely Oceanside is, just like they do today, they want to stop, they want to live here, and do business in Oceanside. I
guess with highway speeds maybe 25, 30 miles an hour in those days, it'd probably be an overnight stop if you were going from LA to the border, for example.
There was many overnight stops, and we had a number of hotels that were built along the Coast Highway that catered to the traveling public, as well as auto courts, so people could just pull in their cars and stay in a little cabin, if you will, and those sprung up overnight, literally, to take care of the traveling public.
So what was the next major watershed event Camp Pendleton in 42 or 43?
You know, that was a huge event, life-changing event for Oceanside. We go from a little sleepy town, maybe beach town of 3,500 people, and we triple our population by the next census. Camp Pendleton comes into being in 1942 because of World War II. and it really changes the landscape of Oceanside. There was no sufficient housing. The schools were bursting at their seams. We might have had one additional elementary school. Now we have school children, 3 times the amount of school children. People are literally going door to door and asking for a room to rent because there wasn't anything. You've got military coming for training, but you've also got civilian workers who are actually building the infrastructure, and they're coming with their families. So it was a huge, huge impact on Oceanside. Economically, it was a building boom, and it had its own problems as well as it did its pluses because of the shortages that we were facing.
So what would you consider the next major event? Up until now, with the exception of the sort of short-term impact of the pier, you still haven't talked about the harbor. So is that still in the future?
You know, for decades, actually, the city pushed to have a small craft harbor, and we were actually hoping to utilize the Del Mar boat basin at Camp Pendleton, but we needed the land from Camp Pendleton, and the powers that be, the top brass at Camp Pendleton, didn't want to cooperate because we had been actually pushing for a small craft harbor since the 40s, and finally, I believe it was in the late 50s, we get the green light that they're going to cooperate, give us the use of some of that much needed land that we needed for a small craft harbor. And Oceanside got very, very excited because it was the first kind of go-ahead that we got for that opportunity. Had a contingency from Oceanside go to Washington, D.C., get all of the approval. We had a bond issue that had to be voted by the voters that was approved overwhelmingly. And we actually had a Harbor Days before we had a harbor. I think it was in 1960 was our first Harbor Days before the harbor was even built, because people were so excited. And now we have the first the only small craft harbor between, I believe, Dana Point and San Diego. So it was a huge thing recreationally for Oceanside to have the harbor. And the harbor actually is going to celebrate its 60th year this year. They opened in June 1963, and so they'll celebrate their 60th anniversary here in 2013 as well.
So now we're into the range of what a lot of people who are viewing the show remember. So what is there one significant impact between then and now? I mean, since the harbor, is it more incremental growth as opposed to big change?
You know, there's a lot of change that really impacted Oceanside aside from the harbor, and that would be the changes that were going across all of America with the advent of the shopping malls. And where downtown Oceanside, they had all the shoe stores, the clothing stores, we had the department stores, J.C. Penney's and Sears was in our downtown, the jewelry stores. And so with the advent of the shopping malls, the shopping centers, that really impacts Oceanside. And shopping malls were happening all over San Diego County, but Oceanside, because we were such a shopping hub and we were the go-to place for so many of the smaller coastal cities as well as Bonsall, Fallbrook, Vista, people came here to do their shopping, to do their Christmas shopping, to do their school shopping, to do their daily shopping needs. So now you've got the advent of the shopping malls, and the shopping center takes the department stores out of downtown Oceanside. That was huge, had a huge impact. So, and a huge negative impact. And
well, you know, before we we're almost up to date. We almost got the whole history in before the break.
Sure.
But let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about that impact and maybe some of the migration to the east that's happened in the last 30 years.
All right.
So stay with us. We'll be gone for a few minutes, and we'll be back talking about Oceanside's 125th birthday celebration.
Join us in the fight against hunger and poverty at whyhunger.org.
Here's some other quick tips that you might not have thought of. If you still drink tap water, keep a pitcher or bottle in your fridge for a cold glass of water instead of running the tap to get it colder. Don't use running water to thaw out your food. Not only is this wasteful, but it's also unsanitary. Instead, use your refrigerator to thaw your food, or the defrost sitting on your microwave if you're in a hurry. If you drop ice on the floor, put it in your houseplants or yard instead of throwing it down the drain.
Just relax and tell me what you see.
Asthma.
This one?
Contaminated food.
This one?
West Nile virus.
This?
$5 billion in property damage.
And how about this one?
Lyme disease.
Once you know the serious threats they pose, you'll never see household pests the same way again. Learn more at pestworld.org.
Welcome back to the Voice of Oceanside. Christy, you've taken us through to maybe the 80s when Oceanside is no longer just a downtown and things start moving inland. So let's wrap up our history lesson with that.
Yeah, of course, the push eastward actually happens maybe as early as the 40s when Marty's Valley Inn goes down into the valley. By the 1950s, we've got subdivisions being built down in the valley, and homes are pushing eastward because, of course, the homes are being fully developed here along the coastline. And so we've got now the schools, the Tri-City area is being built up, Henny Hills. That's all taking place in the 50s and the 60s. Miracosta College actually comes out of the high school campus at Oceanside High School and gets built out at its current campus, I believe, in 1970. So there's a lot of change and a lot of push eastward. And ironically, out around the Mission San Luis Rey, which is, a historical landmark founded in 1798. So it all kind of comes full circle when you talk about the development of the area.
Well, let's talk a little more about the Oceanside Historical Society,
Sure.
because that's not set up just for the 125th birthday. You're a long-term resource for Oceanside residents. So first of all, where are you?
Yeah, we're at 305 North Nevada. We're in the old police station, so we're in a historic building. We're downtown. We're open Thursdays and Friday. We're staffed just by all volunteer. There's no paid staff. And we invite anybody to come in and take a look at what we have. We've got one of the largest photo collections in San Diego County. And we do have a number of research materials. Most of it's digitized. We do have a lot of artifacts and memorabilia. We don't always get to display everything we have because we have such a small facility, but we have been around since 1985.
Now, understand that a lot of these photos are actually contributed by residents.
That's exactly how we built up our photo collection. A number of prominent citizens and long-term citizens donated and loaned some of their photo collection back in the mid-1980s, and ever since then we continue to grow. We continue to grow our photo collection, if not daily, weekly. People will submit their photos via email. We're looking for high resolution photographs, and that way if they're high resolution they can be duplicated, they can be enlarged. But a number of times people just bring in their old photographs. These are, my great aunt, and they don't know who they are anymore, and we find some historical and fascinating photos. A couple of years ago, someone from Minnesota had glass plate negatives from the 1880s of Oceanside that we have never seen before, and so excited. And he actually, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Morton, he actually sent those to us because he thought, I'm going to pass away, my kids aren't going to know what they are, they're going to wind up in the trash. So we received just a wonderful treasure through these glass plate negatives. They were from the 1880s and 1890s. We've never seen those photographs before.
Well, that's great. Now, let's make sure we start our focus now on 2013.
Sure.
And I want to do that by going back to this magazine. How do people access this? Where is it going to be available?
We're going to have 50,000 copies of these magazines. They're going to be available at the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce. We're going to have them at the Historical Society, at the Visitor Center. I'm sure our partners like Main Street Oceanside, so they're going to be at the Farmers Market and the street fair. In fact, Main Street Oceanside is going to have a really cool photo booth. It's a 10 by 10 booth. You won't be able to miss it because it'll have the logo, the 125th logo, and they have actually printed all the sides of the canopy itself has historic photos. And we're going to be at the street fair passing out those historic magazines. We're very, very excited about the magazines. We'll also be selling the T-shirts.
Which we have an example
That's
of right here. When does that start?
We're going to be at January 17th, I believe, so the following Thursday. Not this Thursday, but I guess it's next week. So.
Okay. And then on a regular basis after that?
Yes, okay. We hope to have a volunteer there.
And the T-shirts are ready for sale.
And we have been selling them for the last few months, and they're going all over the world. People come in and buy them. We've shipped them to places in the Midwest. But we've also gotten photographs of people wearing them in Scotland, in South Africa, Atlanta, Georgia, all over. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, probably with the military connection, it's more places than we even know about.
Sure. Or folks that maybe grew up here and remember the tan your hide in Oceanside slogan, and they see it on our website or on our Facebook, and they, oh, I remember that, I've got to have that, and they'll actually just call up and order the T-shirts.
Now, are they also at the Visitor Center or just at your
At the Oceanside Chamber.
At
yes.
the Chamber and
yes.
at your office?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is the July 3rd event the first major event, or is there something we should be looking forward to before that?
You know, we've got a number of events. One of the things, February 9th, I believe, is the date. The Historical Society and the Oceanside Public Library. We're going to do actually a history presentation of the first 50 years. It's a free event to the public. Anyone can attend. It's going to be at the public library, the community rooms. So I'm going to do a presentation, a photo presentation on the first 50 years, the history of Oceanside. It's one of my favorite things to do. One of the major events, though, that we're really hoping everyone realizes, July 3rd, 2013 is the actual anniversary date, and we're going to have a ceremony at the Oceanside Civic Center Plaza. The City of Oceanside, the partners for the 125th Committee are going to be there. We're going to have dignitaries. Tri-City Medical Center is going to be providing 125 cake. We're going to do cupcakes. We're hoping that actually the community comes out in whole to help us celebrate our 125th. So
who are now? Obviously, we have the Historical Society.
Yes.
Is a driver of this. The Chamber of Commerce is a driver of this.
Yes.
Now, who were the other partners?
Oceanside Museum of Art, Main Street Oceanside, Tri-City Medical Center, Miracosta College, the old Mission San Luis Rey Foundation, or Mission San Luis Rey, and I'm hoping I'm not forgetting anyone else. North County Transit District as well, and Visit Oceanside. And I apologize if off the top of my head I'm forgetting someone. But we actually, invited a number of different organizations to help us come up with ideas and, put it on their focus to be on the 125th.
Is there an outreach to the school district to do any programs, or is that something you do on a normal basis anyway?
The Historical Society does make our resources available to the schools, but I'd love to do that outreach, and it's probably something that we need to do in a broader and a more meaningful way.
And while we're on that topic, I understand that your resources are also available to not necessarily just primary school, but researchers in any category can access your
Yes, the Historical Society has a website. We have a lot of information on our website, oceansidehistoricalsociety.org. But we do have a number of files too. So if someone was wanting information on their family history, or somebody's doing a thesis, or had to do a paper, a student is doing a paper on a specific subject, we have a vast amount of information that we would love to be able to share. Because that's why we're collecting it in the first place, is actually to share it. And so we love it when people want to come and use our resources.
Do you anticipate events being created during the year for later in the year? Obviously, we're at the midpoint with the July 3rd date.
You know, what we've thought about doing is maybe having some specific dates, but I think what we thought made more sense is the organizations who are doing their celebrations is to tie the 125th in. So as an example, the Mission San Luis Rey and their Heritage Ball. And the Mission San Luis Rey, by the way, they're going to be celebrating their 215th anniversary this year. And they're going to recognize that Oceanside turns 125th at their Heritage Ball and their other celebrations, Dias de los Muertos, and Harbor Days. When the Chamber puts on Harbor Days in September, we're going to be advertising, of course, the fact that it's 125th. We'll have the booth down there that Main Street will have. We'll have that at Harbor Days so people can see the photos. We're also going to do a big push about how the harbor has turned 60 years. So we've just thought it would make more sense to use all of the organizations when they have their galas and their events, just to help us tie it into the 125th.
You know, as I'm listening to you about this, I realize that I haven't had an appreciation for the historical value of a lot of the photos that I have. And it's probably too late to take care of some of that, but I'm going to pay more attention. I would imagine that a lot of people undervalue these photos and other memorabilia that they have, and just assume that if the family's not interested, no one else would be.
That's true. Well, and the other thing, too, is that some people, you know, will say, oh, do you have any historic photos? Well, people don't think of their photos as historic. I know I don't. But when you think, like, you know, did your family have a family picnic at the beach or at the pier, you know, 20, 30, 50, 70 years ago? Well, of course. Well, that's a historic photo. Were you ever in a parade as a kid? You know, of course. Now, there's a historic photo. It just might capture your family photo of you standing there on the parade route just might capture a building that's no longer standing in Oceanside. You might have a graduation down at the pier in 1972 that is exactly what we're looking for. So it's really changing the mindset of what people consider historic or not. And then, too, people think that, you know, oh, my kids aren't interested in this, therefore no one's interested in it. And I beg to differ. I haven't seen a photograph I haven't liked at this point. People, I just, number one, even if it's not historic, if it doesn't pertain to the pier or the Mission or downtown, we're in archives. We're actually saving, you know, our family history. So if you're a long-term family member, how does one's history get preserved and then shared if it isn't first, you know, donated and given to the Historical Society so we can come back later? Oh, do you have something on, you know, an Eli Jones? Well, of course we do. Here's the whole file. And then people are amazed at sometimes when they're doing their own family discovery what we may have that they never knew about their own family.
Well, we're just about at the end of our show. Give us the website again.
The Oceanside Chamber's website is simply oceansidechamber.com, and we'll have special events. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Scott's going to kill me, but I think we have celebrating125.com, so they can go right to our schedule of events and find out more about the magazine. The Oceanside Historical Society is oceansidehistoricalsociety.org. The Chamber has a Facebook page, so they can check out the Oceanside Chamber Facebook page. And the Historical Society also has our own Facebook page, and we have a lot of great photos on our Facebook page, so I encourage people. And then they can find out about events that the Historical Society is going to do. Well,
Christy, thanks for joining us. I can feel your enthusiasm about Oceanside's history, and that's great. And we hope that you share in Oceanside's 125th birthday on July 3rd, 2013. Thanks for watching this edition of The Voice of Oceanside. And like many of the shows here on KOCT, it is available for viewing at koct.org. Thanks for watching.